Hi, everybody. My name is Sebastian. This is Julia. We are from AXA Germany. And we are telling you today how we finally ended up in Grafana Cloud, although we never had the intention to do so. At the beginning, at least. So, to give you a little bit of context, so we are from a small team of around 5 people working on operations topics, a small product team. I'm the product owner. Julia is one of the engineers. The overall team size is a little bigger than 5, but 5 people is more or less the group of people that was relevant for what we were doing in AXA. To give you some ideas, we are from AXA Germany, so AXA overall is quite large. The Germany entity is not that big. We have only 400 developers compared to what we have heard today. We are relatively small. We had other challenges. You will see it in a minute. So what were these challenges and how did we came to the idea of building a monitoring solution, which was at the very beginning not at all the goal that we had. So to go a little bit back, the team was building a log management stack at the very beginning. And this was around 2021 where we finished this one. And then we were thinking about, okay, what should we do now? So, and we in AXA, we are doing DevOps like most of the companies are doing these days. And people are facing a lot of challenges in running the applications. We are going to cloud stacks. And we were thinking of, okay, what can we do to help the development teams to run their stuff? And we came across this quote from Gene Kim. This is from the 3 Ways of DevOps that somehow inspired us to do something about metrics, because we believe at the end monitoring is somehow the feedback loop for IT operations to give some feedback to the development teams, how the applications are doing, of course, and to improve. So this is the initial idea from 2021 where we decided, okay, we need to do something about monitoring. Of course, we had already tooling in place, but this was quite old and mixed technologies like many companies have. And so we said, okay, let's do something about it. These are the figures where we are today. So like 5.5 million time series, not too many. We have like 500 users on Grafana Cloud. And we have very many small, tiny applications actually at the end. So what were the core challenges and why is this a little bit special what we did and how we ended up in Grafana Cloud? We had special challenges. So when we decided we wanted to go for building a monitoring stack, I was talking to the management team and everybody said, yeah, great, do it, but. Okay, what but? But was, oh, you don't have budget. So you can do something, but the overall budget will be the same that we are investing for observability. And so, okay, so what do we do if we cannot invest something? Okay, we're not going to Grafana Cloud in the first place. That's clear. The other challenge was, okay, it's also great if you do the monitoring, but can you do this please without asking the developers to do something? Okay, so even more difficult. So we needed to think smart about what can we do to start with observability and metrics. So in the beginning, this was mainly about metrics, without asking developers to build metric endpoints and without investing too much in infrastructure. So, and this is how we started.
Okay, now you know quite something about our background. We had no money, so the talk about buying licenses was really short, Sebastian mentioned. We started deciding we will build the entire solution on open source software. But there was another challenge, like the team was not allowed to invest time. So, like mentioned, we couldn't ask them, build your own metric endpoints, and only a few applications at that time had their own metric endpoints. So when we're going to do monitoring, we had only a few targets to monitor. That's not a way where you get a lot of users using monitoring when you have no information about the applications. And that's why we started integrating middleware components. We did that by building custom exporters based on access logs, which took the access logs and built own HTTP metrics. So middleware components like proxies and gateways get used by a lot of applications. And so we had information about a lot of applications without the need to go to the users and ask them to integrate the metric endpoints. So that's how we got the data. And once you got your data, the next question is, where do you store it? There are some tools, and a few teams at AXA at that point were already using Prometheus. And at that time, it seemed like a promising solution, and we just thought, okay, we will go with it. And of course, once you made the decision to use Prometheus, it's like an easy one to also use Grafana for visualization, right? And that's where we started building also standard dashboards for the HTTP metrics we got from the middleware. So as a user, you can just, when you have an application which is using a proxy or a gateway, can just log in into Grafana, open the dashboard, and it will work right out of the box. So it's very easy to do monitoring. And this got us to our MVP. We had a very low cost, but quite powerful initial monitoring stack, which was easy to use and ready to grow with us. But like it is with initial versions, you like to improve. And for us, improvement meant making monitoring simple. Because it had to be simple in order to be successful. As you remember, our developers, our users, had only little time to spare, so they couldn't afford to put much effort into finding out how to set up targets, how to edit YAML files so that Prometheus will take the targets and file-based service discovery will work. They quite liked our initial stack and got the idea, okay, I can actually do something with this. This brings real value to me. I have a lot of better understanding on what is going on in my application. And they wanted to get more information out of it, so they started building their own metric endpoints and required a solution which didn't require any Prometheus skills. And that's why we started building the Prometheus Management Agent. This is an agent which runs next to Prometheus and handles all the configuration automatically. What I mean by that, it handles all the rule files and the target files without the user to have knowledge about what is going on in the background, how the YAML file looks. Another part we put effort in is into standardization. We wanted to make finding things easy, so we want to know our data. What I mean by that is we enabled auto-labeling on our rules and target files. Like if you want to know in which stage your application is running, your target, you can just look at the stage label. It will have one of three possible values, and those values are always written in capital letters. Everywhere you look, this is the standard, and so it goes with other labels. So you don't have to guess on which kind of data you will find. And this also makes integration into other components more simpler, because you know what kind of data you're looking at, and you don't need to do a lot of error handling because one value you expect to be there isn't there. A very central component in our monitoring stack is the config management backend. It feeds this auto-labeling by adding metadata. So it asks other services and ensures a high-quality metadata. And it also provides configuration config data to the Prometheus agent and metadata to our own alert management. The alert management we did build because, of course, Grafana has its own alert rules, but at the time we started building our stack, it didn't quite fit our requirements, and we thought this is not the easiest solution we could give our users. So we built our own alert management with simple rule management. Now you got an idea what challenges we had and what solutions we built for that. But I also want to show you how the components work together. And that's why I want to show you our technical architecture of our simple user-friendly monitoring stack. Okay, I ended up with a last slide talking about how our alert, that we built an own alerting solution, our own alert management solution. And part of this solution is the self-service web UI. So a user, in this case it's a developer, can just log in into the UI and manage rules like update, create, delete them, and set up targets. So when I am a developer and have just set up my own metric endpoint, I of course know my target URL, can enter the URL to the website, and by one click just set up monitoring. All the labeling in the background is handled automatically, so the user just needs to know what query do I need for the alert rule, and do this entering of the URL and one click activate monitoring and also deactivate monitoring. So it's very easy. And with this management API, I referred to before as config management backend. This is the central component which stores the alert rules and targets, but also enabling the auto-labeling, so the standardization for the self-service web UI. So that's where the UI gets the label values from. The management API asks other services like ServiceNow, Kubernetes, Puppet for more information, so to feed the metadata enrichment, and also stores targets. I mentioned it before. But the Prometheus API, this is our Prometheus Management Agent you saw before, which runs next to Prometheus. It goes once a minute and asks the management API if anything has changed. So if so, it will update its internal configuration automatically, and with the labeling, all the rules and the targets get to the right Prometheus instance, because of course we have a lot of instances in different stages and different platforms, so we don't need to care about how this is handled. When we're talking about alerting rules, so we have an alerting rule, we get the alert, and of course it goes to the alert manager. And there we built another component, it's the ServiceNow webhook. Because at AXA, if you have a business critical application, and this application runs into problems, we take it seriously, you have to inform incident manager. And you have to inform them by going to another website, doing some manual effort to declare the incident. And we automated this process. So now as a user with a business critical application, you have your alert query, just configure the alert rule in ServiceNow, in self-service web UI, and there's an option to just activate the ServiceNow incident. So when the alert gets to the Prometheus API, it already has all the necessary information attached in the labeling to create this incident. So the user has to do very little to actually set up monitoring, get the ServiceNow incident, and configure the alerting rules. That's I call a user-friendly monitoring stack. But what did we achieve with that? And how successful is our stack? And once we're talking about success, how do we measure it? For us, a good measurement is the number of targets. Because when you think back at the beginning on initial stack, we had only a few applications with own metric endpoints. So of course, the number of targets was really low. And by users using more and more our stack, building more and more endpoints, of course, the number of components was growing. And in the graph you see, we started counting the number of components and alert rules, and by components I mean targets and monitoring, somewhere in October 2022. So after our initial stack was already in use. And this graph shows that we see that there was a continuous growth of both numbers, and even today, with Grafana Cloud in place, new components are getting added on a daily basis. So it's around 1.8 targets a workday, which get adding. But how would we think what made up our success? I think in the beginning, it was really important to get users engaged with our stack. So we integrated those middleware components. We built standard dashboards. We made it very easy to just enable the user to explore monitoring. And as users built their own metric endpoints, we made it easy for them to set up the targets. And one really helpful thing for us was the self-service UIs, because we enabled the user to do the little effort which needs to be done by themselves. And as you can imagine, with a 5-person team, we didn't even want to set 1.8 targets per day. So management was quite happy with this graph, you can imagine. And we could show that with minimal investment and minimal effort, we were able to deliver real value. And this helped build further support for further development. And how this went, Sebastian will tell you.
Okay, so this was a little bit of a deep dive, how we came to the point of having something valuable in monitoring, always open source, with minimal effort. And due to the overall success of what we did, things got changed. You remember from the beginning, there was no budget. Suddenly there was budget. Suddenly people were seeing, especially the management team were seeing, okay, this is not just some experiment and then some guys are doing Prometheus and Grafana and they are being happy, but I don't see an overall impact on the organization. No, things are going to change because of the success of the open source stack that we had. So money was there suddenly, and also the priorities for the development teams got changed. So at the beginning was like you need to beg for somebody to getting the time to implement the metric endpoint, and this was not the developer who didn't want to do it. It was more like business was having other priorities, and the IT management was not strong enough, or let's say it didn't see the immediate benefit, so that they would over prioritize the business projects. So and now it's different. Now it's an expectation to have a metric endpoint. It's quite natural. Nobody's asking anymore whether we can spend effort in this one. That's how it should be, right? So, and after that point where now everybody is convinced that metrics is what you should have and you should invest in, now we got the option to go to Grafana Cloud. So that's why many are here. Everybody is a customer, I guess, or it will be a customer, maybe one day. And so as we now have some, let's say, a bigger attention on the observability topic in the company, so we thought about what to do next. And we already optimized a lot of stuff and a lot of things that might not be valuable for you, but have been important for us to get where we are today. But some stuff we will never do. And this is especially what is about all the enterprise features in Grafana Cloud. And we got very interested, especially in incident response management and what Cedric just showed, the knowledge graph and all these topics. We will never do it with a 5-person team. So, right, there's no chance. So this was the main driver why we decided then to go to Grafana Cloud. While we are building the monitoring stack, we also migrated to Tempo from Jaeger tracing, and we introduced Loki and even did some multi-tenancy features on the open source stack and a lot of stuff in addition. So we were anyhow already on Grafana tooling. So the natural improvement was moving to the Grafana Cloud. And of course, doing so will reduce your complexity if you're running this all by yourself. This is a huge amount of infrastructure running there. And this is also quite good for our team, because nobody wants to maintain a huge amount of infrastructure. Everybody wants to do the new cool stuff, right? So this was great, and we decided to move to Grafana Cloud. It took us like 2 to 3 months to move everything over. And we are still in a phase where we are going to improve. So we finished our migration somewhere in March this year, I think, and now we are going to replace quite some amount of infrastructure that we have still on site, especially the old automation stuff that Julia showed you before. Of course, there's some stuff you don't need anymore. If you have Grafana Cloud, I mean, now there's the fleet management. It's a relatively new feature, and we are going to replace a lot of the custom management tooling that we have with fleet management. Also, the custom alert management UI that we have will go away. We are already using Grafana Managed Alerts as a backend service today, so there's still this super easy UI because the Grafana Managed Alert UI is not easy and it's not always like we would like to have it. But if we want to utilize features like IRM and so on, there's no way around getting rid of our own UI. And so once we have done this, I think most of our custom infrastructure is gone. A little bit will be remaining. And apart from the infrastructure optimization part, we are going to work more on tracing. Tracing is the signal that has the weakest quality, like it might be for many of you. So we have pretty good data quality in metrics and logs. Julia explained about the auto labeling. We are really taking care of correct service namespaces and service names and consistency across signals. For tracing, we still need to fix this. So this will be done soon, and this is important for getting the knowledge graph and everything working quite well. Apart from that, we are optimizing the usage of OpenTelemetry, especially when it comes to common conventions. We have our own labeling rules today, so we are right now in the phase where we are migrating or adopting labeling rules that are more like standard rules, like in Mimir and Prometheus, you should label service namespaces and service names. We are also going to adopt OpenTelemetry logs. Very likely we have an internal Kafka backend with a custom JSON log format, and we will replace this with OpenTelemetry logs also in order to utilize more of the standard features of Grafana Cloud. And in addition to the more technical topics, we are working with the development teams nowadays to help them to improve the quality of their monitoring. We are doing this by assessing each individual application, checking how do the dashboards look like, what about the alert rules, where can they improve, and we are writing little reports and suggestions on how to improve their individual monitoring solution. So, and now then, I think we're done with everything what we wanted to share today. This is how we ended up in Grafana Cloud. Like I said at the beginning, this was not the intention. At the beginning, we just wanted to get a cheap stack, and now we are quite happy in the Grafana Cloud.